can just join me in saying the pledge. Can you see my flag?
I got a flag too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's start. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
States
of America and to the republic
Republic
and
stand
one nation
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty.
and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the December meeting, and also welcome our two agencies that are going to be presenting. We have both the New York City Department of City Planning and the New York City Department of Transportation here. So Brooke, for attendance, because I can't see everybody on my phone, you said everybody's here, correct?
Correct. We have Antoine from
All right, so we
Councilmember
have a
Hanks.
full board. And if I can just ask the members if they would be willing to accept the minutes from the November 2020.
I accept the minutes. I accept the minutes.
Jerry first, can I have a second, please?
I second.
Okay.
I second, if you can hear me.
Okay, yes, okay, thank you. Okay, so let's just move right along to our presentations. So first up is the New York City Department of City Planning for their City of Yes Economic Opportunity proposal. City Planning, take it away.
All right.
Matt,
Thank
would
you.
you like me to make you the presenter, or can you pull the screen?
I believe I would like to be a presenter. And actually, WebEx is telling me I need to restart in order to present. So I will be back in just a second. Apologies.
No trouble. It is a WebEx thing.
We've been doing so well with this, and then today, all of a sudden.
It's the holiday spirit. It's catching up with us.
Okay. All
Hey,
right.
well, good afternoon.
I'm back. Okay. All right. Confirming that everyone can see my screen. About to make it
Yes.
full screen. Perfect. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Waskevitz. I am a senior planner here at the Department of City Planning for Economic Development and Regional Planning. I've had the opportunity to meet quite a few of you actually over the last 2 years. I've been project manager for this citywide text amendment. But for those I haven't met, it's good to meet you. And I have about 15 minutes or so worth of presentation. I think at this point, all three community boards have at least seen something similar to this, but you can hear it right from the horse's mouth here. And then any remaining time that I have this afternoon with you, happy to answer questions. And anything that we don't get to today, you can reach me either directly or through the Staten Island team. So diving right in, City of Yes at its highest level, 3 initiatives that are all citywide in scale to modernize and update our city's zoning regulations, to support small businesses, create affordable housing, and promote sustainability. It's part of our mayor's agenda for a more inclusive and equitable City of Yes. There are 3 initiatives within the City of Yes umbrella. City of Yes for Economic Opportunity is the second in this sequence. And so we're currently in the referral period, which officially runs through January 8th. But as many of you might be aware, we're committed to making sure you have ample time to review these proposals. We're giving community boards at least through the end of January in order to vote on these proposals. And so we want to make sure that we have that opportunity for feedback and for dialogue and any questions you might have. But before diving into the policy itself, I think it's a helpful recap to go over what zoning governs when it comes to businesses in New York City. So zoning defines hundreds of uses or business types, sorts them by zoning district, and regulates things like what kind of business activities you can do in your space, how big you can be. But in most cases, our zoning has not updated these regulations since 1961. So as you can imagine, because it's 60 years old, there's outdated and sometimes counterproductive regulations on business activity. And what we found in speaking with businesses and organizations that work with businesses is that a lot of times these regulations just make no sense. and are holding businesses back. So we knew that our zoning for businesses was in need of a refresh. We've been on a listening tour for well over a year and a half now, and we've been asking folks like the Staten Island Chamber of Commerce and Staten Island EDC and other organizations that work locally with businesses day in and day out, what are the barriers to establishing, expanding, and operating a business here in New York City? And we also, through this process, had public information sessions with members of community boards to identify other issues that we might not be hearing from the small business community. So it's been an iterative process shaping these proposals over time. And a lot of what we've heard is that our rules for governing businesses, in many cases, they're frustrating, they're slow, they're illogical, and it can make it hard to establish a business. And so today you might want to be able to locate a business along a commercial street. And because the zoning doesn't define that business type, you might have to go to the Department of Buildings, spend 6 months in a discretionary process just to make clear that you can locate on a retail street. And so we want to make the zoning more easy for folks to understand, but also as a result of this work, make sure that our zoning is more simple and more adaptable and more modern to today's economy. So 4 main goals for the initiative. First, we want to make it easier for businesses to find space and grow by lifting zoning barriers so businesses can be closer to their customers. We're particularly focused on storefront vacancy in this first set of proposals. Goal number 2, we want to boost emerging industries. So these are business types that are growing across our city but face a known or identified zoning barrier or just simply some confusion in the zoning that we want to clarify for these business types to expand and grow. Third, we want to enable business-friendly streetscapes. We know that business activity isn't just about what happens within a building, but also how a business interacts with its surroundings. So we want to deliver some more safe and active and walkable streets for both businesses and residents of our communities. Fourth and finally, we want to create new opportunities for businesses to open. So this is revisiting the broader zoning toolkit we have for all the kinds of discretionary processes through the BSA, the City Planning Commission, and the zoning districts themselves, and make sure that it reflects the kinds of tools that we need for today's economy. So within these 4 goals, 18 proposals, I will go through them at the absolute highest level that I can, but I'm happy to go into much more detail in the Q&A. And we also have a lot more resources available on our website for each of these 18, nyc.gov/yes, economic opportunity. So goal 1, we want to make it easier for businesses to find space and grow by lifting zoning barriers so businesses can be closer to their customers. So in most cases, like I said, our zoning rules for businesses have not been updated since 1961. It's long past due that we update our zoning to reflect and respond to today's economy. So our first 6 proposals are designed to do exactly that, make our zoning more simple, more adaptable, more modern, so our small businesses can more easily locate and grow. Proposal 1. Today, in areas zoned as residential, you have non-conforming stores. These were stores and other businesses that were there prior to 1961. And in some cases, they have an arbitrary 2-year time clock for being able to reactivate if that space goes vacant. We saw this a lot during the pandemic, where existing businesses went out of business and 2 years goes by awfully fast. And so some of these businesses end up getting caught in that 2-year rule, which we want to remove in the places where it currently exists so that you can have former storefronts become reoccupied. Proposal 2, in many parts of our city and in Staten Island, you have neighborhood commercial districts, C1 and C2 districts. They may be located in similar places. In fact, there are many places where they're located along the same street or across the street from one another. And yet, as a relic of the 1961 zoning resolution, they allow for different business types. So we want to simplify the distinctions between our C1 and our C2 districts, allow the same mix of businesses between them, and we also want to simplify the distinctions between our C4, C5, and C6 districts. In the places where they exist, allow the same mix of businesses between. Proposal 3, the nature of manufacturing has changed a lot since the 60s. It's no longer about mass production. It's no longer about large factories spewing all kinds of harmful things into the air. And a lot of production that happens today, it's small, it's artisan, it's retail friendly, and most importantly, it's clean. The business practices have evolved, the technology has evolved, and there are all kinds of small-scale clean production, things like pottery studios, bakeries, coffee roasters, jewelry makers, microbreweries, apparel designers, 3D printers, and you name it, that are not only appropriate to locate in storefront space or office space, but are advantageous to locate close to where people live. We're going to subject these businesses to a lot of environmental rules built into the zoning to make sure that they are not being a nuisance to their neighbors and are safe to be near residences. But we think this makes a big difference for allowing for innovation and entrepreneurship to flourish across Staten Island and the rest of our city. Proposal 4. If one of those clean businesses I just mentioned were to move into an empty office building, today they would face rules that may require them to add additional loading docks, even if they're a business that doesn't need them, and even if the building can't physically accommodate that kind of a change. So we want to enable adaptive reuse of existing older office buildings, so not requiring a business to tear apart a ground floor of a building just to be able to accommodate new loading docks they don't need. Proposal 5. Today, our zoning allows for many buildings to have a mix of residential and commercial uses, but zoning sometimes restricts a mix of businesses and residences on upper floors. We see this a lot in commercial overlays where you might have a second floor doctor's office that's allowed today, but if that doctor's office goes away, there's no way in our zoning to reoccupy that same second floor space with another kind of office. And we see this also in office buildings where one of the main things that is in our zoning preventing a conversion of that office building from office to residential is something called our stacking rules, which prevent any kind of commercial use to locate above residences. So we want to enable these partial conversions and adaptive reuse of second floor doctor's offices into offices. We're also making sure there's a lot of safeguards here. So complete separation between residential and non-residential portions of a building. Also, anything that's potentially noisy, they have to certify that they are doing attenuation to their sound that is going to not impact anyone around them. Proposal 6, the terms that we use to classify businesses themselves are also similarly not updated. And so it's full of things like typewriter repair, but it doesn't include newer kinds of businesses like cell phone repair. So we want to update the way we classify our businesses, make sure they reflect today's economy. So we're proposing to both simplify and modernize the terms and zoning we have. We're not making any changes to where businesses are allowed as a part of Proposal 6. It's all about that terminology, and we have a resource on our website that translates each of today's uses into what they would look like in the proposed use framework. Goal number 2, we want to support growing industries by reducing obstacles and reducing ambiguity in our zoning for particular emerging industries. So the 5 that are named here are not the only industries that are growing in our city, but there are ones where we have identified a specific zoning barrier or clarification that is needed to enable this kind of business to grow. Proposal 7, urban agriculture. Today, you can have a greenhouse in any commercial district or commercial overlay, but what you can't have is that same sort of growing of plants that you would have in a greenhouse, but have that be in the actual building itself. And so we want to clarify this and say that what you're allowed to do in a greenhouse, you're allowed to do in the building itself, whether that's a storefront or an office. Proposal 8, life sciences. Laboratories are a growing business type across our city today. They're innovation-based. They tend to cluster near hospitals and universities, but our zoning is very antiquated. It still defines laboratories as being for medical or dental use. It still says that you can manufacture teeth or dentures, but it doesn't actually say what else you could do around, say, prosthetic 3D printed limbs. And so we know this is an industry that is a great source of jobs across our city and is also one that has ample room to grow. So we want to clarify the zoning, make sure that it's clear that these kinds of labs that are safe are appropriate to locate in commercial districts. And we're modifying our existing special permit for labs. So it could be potentially useful near research centers like a hospital or university. I'll note the special permit is fully discretionary, would have to go through a full process involving the community board and the city council member. Proposal 9, any restaurant or bar in the city, today you can have a live concert, up to 200 people with ticketed events and with posted show times. But because of the way our zoning is a relic of really the Prohibition era, You can't dance in the same spaces where you can have a live concert and band play today. In this same space, you also often can't have comedy. You can't have an open mic night. And we think this not only makes no sense, but goes back to the discriminatory cabaret laws. So we want to simplify the rules here and treat all forms of live entertainment the same way. Keep in place that existing 200-person threshold for bands in these kinds of venues, and limit any sort of larger nightlife operations to our city's industrial areas as well as to high-density commercial districts. Proposal 10 on amusements. So our zoning has really outdated terms for defining experiential businesses, things like virtual reality, children's arcades, and it basically restricts all of these kinds of businesses to Coney Island or the city's industrial areas, but yet go across the bridge to New Jersey, and you will find all kinds of experiential businesses that are not only allowed, but are perfectly appropriate to locate in, say, an office or a storefront setting, or a strip mall or something of that nature. And so we want to make sure that we're not losing jobs and economic activity across the river, and rather these kinds of businesses are allowed to locate at a small scale in storefront space and at a larger scale, again, in our office districts that are higher density. Proposal 11, home occupations. Many New Yorkers start their business in their home. Zoning today allows for a wide range of home occupation types, so lawyers, jewelry makers, music teachers, but there's lots of important safeguards around home-based businesses. So you can't be retail, you can't sell anything you didn't produce on site, and notably, you can't produce a nuisance. So if you do, your business can be shut down. If you're in a rental unit, you can be evicted if you're doing something that violates the terms of your home business in zoning. But the pandemic changed how New Yorkers work from home. Zoning hasn't kept up with this. It still prohibits specific occupations like interior decorators or barbers and other restrictions that hold back business creation. So what we're proposing here is to enable entrepreneurship with modern rules for home-based businesses while keeping in place all those safeguards that exist today that ensure home-based businesses are being good neighbors. Our third goal, we want to enable business-friendly streetscapes. So like I mentioned earlier, economic vibrancy isn't just about what occurs inside a building, but how a business interacts with its surroundings. And we know that inconsistency in streetscape rules, or some cases a total absence of zoning rules for streetscape, means that there's no way in our zoning to curb some of the worst outcomes of, say, a business activity spilling out into the public right away. So these three proposals are designed to ensure that businesses contribute to active, safe, and walkable streets. Proposal 12. Streetscape conditions like long blank walls or drive-throughs can tend to break up a retail street, and it can create unpleasant or even sometimes unsafe conditions for other cars. It can lead to conflicts in traffic. And in vast parts of our city, there's no rules whatsoever that would prevent a new building that makes conditions even worse. So what we're proposing here is actually based on some existing rules in some of the special districts on Staten Island, what would create a more consistent and easy to understand baseline set of rules for commercial ground floor design. Proposal 13. Auto servicing and repair, it's typically treated as industrial and it's located in our city's industrial districts. But some exceptions exist today and allows for auto repair on retail streets and in residential neighborhoods. And sometimes these businesses, their activity spills out onto the sidewalk or into neighborhood commercial streets. This can create safety concerns for people who are driving past or for people trying to walk on the sidewalk. So what we're proposing here is to rationalize, consolidate auto servicing into two categories: light auto repair and heavy auto repair. Heavy auto repair, allowed in industrial areas, has to have a license by the State Department of Motor Vehicles. Light auto repair, you could locate in a commercial area, but only after going through the Board of Standards and Appeals for a site plan review that would restrict that activity to the zoning lot. Proposal 14. Post offices, they're allowed in any neighborhood today. They're great hubs for neighborhood parcel delivery and drop off. But if you're not the federal government, you can't open that same kind of a storefront space to do deliveries. And as a result, a lot of what we see is double parking, is like the photo here, parking on a sidewalk. And more so, we see a lot of truck congestion for deliveries. So what we're proposing is to create a new type of use in our zoning called a micro distribution facility, allow these businesses at a small scale in commercial areas, really small scale, 2,500 square feet, encourage deliveries that shift to alternative modes of transportation, give people a place where they can pick up packages in a safe way so there aren't package thieves. I know that I deal with that all the time in my neighborhood. And so we think this is a great way to regulate the creation of local hubs for safe and sustainable deliveries to occur. I'll note, because we have part of DOT on the call, we've been working very closely with DOT's freight transportation unit on this proposal. They have a micro distribution pilot that they're starting to test out, and there's a demonstrated need for the zoning to kind of match what they're doing. So we think of these as two sides of the same coin. Our fourth and final goal is to create new opportunities for businesses to open. So our zoning resolution, many kinds of tools that can be used to initiate a discretionary process to change an area's underlying regulations. So that's special permits from Board of Standards and Appeals, City Planning Commission authorizations and special permits, and of course, zoning districts themselves. So as we're updating our as of right zoning, we also want to update our zoning toolkit for these processes, give businesses better access to pathways that can enable expansion or adaptation. So these last four proposals are all new kinds of discretionary tools that can expand our future economic success of our city. Proposal 15. Large-scale residential development, such as NYCHA campuses, they're zoned as residence districts in most cases. This means that retail services and makerspace can't easily locate, and residents are therefore further away from goods and services and jobs. This proposal creates a new pathway, a CPC authorization that allows for up to 15,000 square feet of commercial space in new or existing campuses, giving residents greater access to jobs or basic necessities. I'll note with the CPC authorization, these are just like a text amendment referred to a community board. And so you all would see any of these proposals that would go before you. Proposal 16 around corner stores. This is also a CPC authorization. So just like the last one, both of these proposals, they're subject to environmental review. They're also subject to community board referral. And so many portions of our city, including on Staten Island, are not within walking distance of a local retail store or another kind of small neighborhood serving business, such as like a coffee roaster or a bookstore. So zoning has no pathways that could allow for a new locally serving business to open, or even an existing one to modify what they're doing over time. I know that there are many businesses that are non-conforming that, because they're subject to non-conformance regulations, can't easily adapt their business practices because the zoning doesn't allow for them to change use groups. So this would create a pathway for those existing businesses that is discretionary, would go before the community board, would make sure that there are no environmental concerns or traffic congestion. But we think this pathway is an important one to ensure that businesses have the ability on a case-by-case basis to at least be considered as being part of a neighborhood fabric. Proposal 17. In some instances, businesses lack options for changing, say, the size or shape of their building. Film studios is a pretty common example we're seeing in other boroughs where they want to build soundstage. The shape of the building they want is not allowed under zoning, but they would like some sort of relief on the shape of that building. So we're creating a CPC authorization that would allow for them to build the shape of the building they want, provided the use is allowed and provided the density is allowed. Lastly, in some instances, it's the actual zoning districts, not the pathways to modify them, that are obsolete. It's particularly true of our city's manufacturing or M districts. So we're creating a range of new M districts that would be at a range of densities and heights that could expand our zoning toolkit for the future. I'll note we are not mapping or rezoning any existing M-zoned areas as part of this proposal. This adds new tools to the toolkit that could be useful in the future. I'll end with a bit on timeline and resources. So we're in the referral period. Like I mentioned earlier, we're accepting every single recommendation you send to us, at least until the beginning of February. And then we're anticipating both public hearing and City Planning Commission vote later this spring, followed by City Council in their part of the process. Resources all available at nyc.gov/yes economic opportunity. I think you've all seen this before, but each community district, we have existing conditions on jobs and storefront data from our analytics unit, and really helping to understand what the economic conditions are in each community district. We're happy to answer questions on that. We also have a lot more detail on each of these 18 proposals on our website, and even further detail in the annotated zoning text itself for those who are very technically inclined and want to see the actual language. And then lastly, I mentioned this in relation to proposal 6, but we've taken each and every single use that's under our zoning today and we've translated it to the future and back. And so if you are a taxidermy store, for example, never fear, you will know exactly where you can locate under the proposed zoning. Lastly, and this is an idea that we first tried out in South Richmond coast zoning relief, and found it to be very useful, both for you all and for us in understanding your feedback on these proposals. We've created a worksheet. It's optional because we know this is a big proposal. There's a lot in it, and we want your specific feedback on each of the 18, not just the overall package. And so we've created this worksheet that's meant to accompany your recommendations, kind of like an attachment or a second page, and to provide you with the room and space to provide additional feedback to us. It's useful both to the BP staff, to the city council, but most importantly to us as the project team to understand exactly what are any concerns or changes you might want, or things that you like as is. And with that, thank you very much for the time, and I would welcome any questions you have.
Nice, man.
Vince, do you have any questions? We'll start with you first.
No, I've studied this and I like it. I mean, the most interesting part to me is the M zones, just because as I explained to city planning earlier, I had worked in Soho before it became fancy, and those sort of, multiple use type of flexible use buildings were very attractive because you could do all kinds of things in them, and that appeals. And I think that there's tremendous potential there for Staten Island because our West Coast is largely M zone, and we are M1, 2, and 3. That's what's established. And then in the text, it's describing the possibility of it going up to quite high FARs. And I just think that has to be worked out in terms of what the parking requirements and things are. But as far as a place to develop, future potential for working in the community, as in working meaning occupations, I think is terrific.
Okay, do any of the board members have any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Community Board 3 is very concerned about how these changes will affect the character of residential communities throughout Staten Island. A question. On Main Street and Highland Boulevard residential area, can the owner of his house on Highland Boulevard and Main Street sell his house? They knock it down and put a bodega there?
I think I'd defer to the Staten Island team because I'm not exactly sure what the zoning is for that intersection.
And the other question, when do we have until, when does this vote have to be taken by us?
We're saying at least the beginning of February. So an alternative way of saying that is you have the entirety of January. But if your vote is usually the first week in a month, let us know. We can work something out. We definitely want to make sure that your votes happen before the City Planning Commission. But also we want to make sure that we have enough time to get your feedback and take that under consideration before the City Planning Commission votes. And so is that clear enough?
Yes.
Okay.
To follow up on that, the economic worksheet that you have, has that been sent to the district managers of the community boards?
I believe it has, but if your district manager doesn't have it, we'll send you a copy right after this.
Well, I can't speak for her. She may very well, but I think it would be helpful to send it to her to make sure that she has it.
Okay.
Jerry, I can let you know that we filled it out with Charlene for 2 hours.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's the answer.
It was actually more than 2 hours because we came back the next Wednesday, so it was like a total of 4. But we did go through it at the land use committee meeting, and then we came back the next Wednesday for
Okay.
it was a special meeting.
Just wanted to make sure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, while we're on the topic, Jerry, just for your information, this worksheet idea came from CB3, as I briefly mentioned earlier, and
That's right.
I think it was even back in before it was August or even July when I was meeting with CB3 folks, talking about how to. It's a big proposal. We know that, and there's a lot in here, and that's where the idea came about. And so I'm really grateful in a word, for the collaboration we've had with Community Board 3 in developing a tool that's been useful citywide in helping break down these proposals a little bit more.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And just to answer your question, we believe the intersection that you referenced is R3X. So theoretically, if someone wanted to pursue an application and receive City Planning Commission approval or try to seek approval, they would submit an application to put in a 2,000 square foot commercial business on the corner, and it would be reviewed by the community board, and it would be reviewed by the City Planning Commission, and they would submit an environmental impact assessment statement, and then those entities would be able to judge whether or not that intersection would benefit from local goods on the corner close to residences, or if the traffic impacts in their environmental statement is not suitable for that intersection.
Thank you.
Do any other members have questions? Okay, thank you, City Planning. We appreciate your time.
Thank
Okay,
you.
moving
Thank
right,
you, Matt.
we're going to go on to the New York City Department of Transportation,
Thank you.
Open Streets and Public Space Programming.
Hi, thank you, Marie. Good evening, everyone. My name is Victoria Carstensen. I'm the Deputy Borough Commissioner for DOT. I just again want to thank you all for giving us the opportunity to chat about our Open Streets and Public Space Programming initiative today. So this program aims to transform streets into vibrant public spaces that foster community engagement, promote active transportation, and enhance cultural vitality throughout the 5 boroughs. So with that, I won't take up too much more time. I believe I'm going to pass it off to Daisy Gonzalez. She's our Assistant Director of Public Space and Programming.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for the opportunity to present here. It's an absolute pleasure to meet all of you. My name is Daisy Gonzalez. I'm the Assistant Director of Public Space Programming, and we'll be doing an overview of Open Street Programming application and also public space Open Streets. I'm gonna pass it to Burkina, and she will start off with the Open Street part, and then we'll follow up with the public space programming.
Want to just confirm that you guys are able to see my screen?
Yes.
All right, perfect. As Stacey mentioned, my name is Burkina Morgan, work with Department of Transportation Public Space Unit as a program manager for the Open Streets program. All right, so today's presentation, we're just going to go over the Open Streets application, public space programming application, and some next steps. So I just want to go over some things that went over this year, that what happened this year. Sorry, I'm getting caught with my words. So in terms of Open Streets, as was previously mentioned, it's a permanent program in the city that transforms New York streets into public space for all. It allows us for a range of activities, promote development, economic development, school support, and it's citywide in order for people to enjoy cultural programming and build community. And we work with a number of community-based organizations, educational institutions, and businesses. In terms of who should apply, so it's really informal, formal, community-based organizations. We have a number of schools that have participated this past year, civic groups, bids, restaurant groups. In terms of educational institutions, we range from pre-K to 12, along with colleges and universities. So it really spans the educational diversity. And in addition to that, if you plan on applying for a school, please make sure that you're an admin or that you encourage admins to apply. As I mentioned, business groups such as restaurant groups, bids, civic associations are also groups that should consider. In terms of our past year, we had some incredibly exciting Open Street moments. We launched our season on Car-Free Earth Day. One of our sites was on Minthorne Street in Staten Island. We had another site on 34th Street in Queens. In July, we did DOT Day on Front Street, so that was another exciting event. We have 46 new open street partners this year, one of which was Jackson Avenue. This is one of our school partnerships with PSMS5 and Street Lab, which is one of our programming partners, as well as Evelyn Place in the Bronx. As mentioned before, we have a number of different types of partners. When it comes to the amounts, we have 67 schools, which we're extremely proud of. That's the most amount of, educational partners that we've had thus far. And we've had 70 informal and formal partners, or community-based organizations that we've partnered with this year. The rest of them have been bids and restaurant groups. We're looking to get more partners and new types of partners in the coming year. So if you guys have any ideas of any organizations and groups and associations that you'd like to refer, please send them our way. In addition to the open streets, we see many of them evolve from open streets to plazas, shared streets, and this is one of them. Kensington Plaza, which was formerly Beverly Open Street, has now turned into this beautiful open space. And this is another one on 103rd Street in Manhattan. It's a shared street. I'm going to pass it to Sal for our trick or streets.
Hi everyone, I'm Sal Guerra. I'm the coordinator of public space programming here at the DOT, and I'm just going to give you a little rundown of our Trick or Streets initiative. I'm actually relatively new to the DOT. This is the first initiative I worked on with the team here. This is the second year of Trick or Streets. We had a very successful first year, so we decided to do it again. And we partnered with Open Streets and Plazas on Halloween to add pedestrian space on what's historically one of the busiest nights of the year, and unfortunately very deadly for pedestrians. So we made it a lot safer around the city. Had over 100 events, including 16 premier sites, one on Minthorn Street in Staten Island. And there was lots of programming and giveaways, including 1,500 pumpkins and gourds from our partners at the Hort, and over 1,000 pounds of candy, which is very exciting to most of the children. Here's one of the plazas where we did some programming, Quisqueya Plaza in Manhattan. And this was new for this year. We celebrated Day of the Dead. We had events celebrating in Times Square. We had a premiere event which featured programming and performances, Katrina installations and altars to celebrate the memory of loved ones who are no longer with us. I believe it was the largest culture event to happen at Times Square Plaza. Here's some images from it. And I'll pass it back to Burkina.
And this year, we have, I guess, it's underway. This Sunday was the first holiday open streets of this season. We closed Fifth Avenue from, I think, 61st all the way to 47th, and have it open to pedestrians. It's really exciting. It's beautiful. I hope that you guys have the opportunity to see it. But getting into the types of open streets that we have. So we have our limited local access, which is streets designated for pedestrians, cyclists to enjoy, but there's also very local and limited vehicle access. And this is primarily for parking, dropping off passengers, delivery, loading, accessoride, emergency vehicles, and we have a 5 miles per hour advisory for those streets. And this is the only category that will actually allow any vehicle access. Outside of that, there's full closure. This is a full street closure, temporarily closed for vehicles during active hours for pedestrian and cyclist use. It really supports businesses, community organizations. And then for schools that apply, we have our full closure for schools, which is the same thing, except it's specifically for schools. Many of them do it around drop off or pick up. Some do it recess. If there are some schools around the city that do not have indoor facilities, they use that as their outdoor recess and PE facilities. So this is an example of our limited local access. You can see there's parked cars, pedestrians, and bikes all shared in this space. For our full closure, no cars, but you do see the ability for cyclists to be there. And obviously there are pedestrians and expanded outdoor dining. For a full closure for schools, kids using the street. In this particular picture, there are pictures, but there are cars, but they are stationary. They're not supposed to be moving. And the side where the students would enter and exit the school, be picked up and dropped off. There's no vehicles there. I'm going to pass it back to Sal and Daisy.
Thank you, Burkina. So we're going to go over the 2024 programming list application. As Burkina mentioned, public space programming connects public spaces like open streets and plazas with organizations that can help activate these spaces. These free activations promote the positive use of the space and also engage with the community. We currently have a request for qualifications for organizations interested in providing programming to open streets and plazas. And this application is now open, and chosen applicants will be added to the public space programming list. Such organizations will be then eligible to provide programming in our public spaces for a 2-year period. And this programming list is an excellent tool for partners to use. I just want to mention, if any of the community boards attended here are interested in having DOT to do a presentation at your community board, please let our Borough Commissioner know. I'll pass it to Sal for the next slide.
Thanks, Daisy. We're going to go over the types of programming. So there's arts, culture, and design. This includes performances such as theater, dance, musical performances. It also includes classes, workshops, or any other types of immersive cultural experiences. One of the updated categories for this year is now cycling, micromobility, and active lifestyles. I believe it used to be fitness and active lifestyle. This kind of covers any kind of active lifestyle programming like yoga, meditation, workout classes, and we really want to put a focus on cycling. This year, we're going to add some learn to ride classes and other kind of micromobility education. Then there is learning and educational. These include any kind of learning experiences like pop-up libraries or school activations. And last programming category we have is for production services. This is a new category this year. And the goal of this category is to support the other 3 categories. So let's say, for example, you're a dance group and you need a stage. A programming partner from the production services category can support you by providing a stage, perhaps some kind of AV support, and other types of logistics. Here's a picture from one of the cultural experiences happening at Corona Plaza in Queens. And for cycling, micromobility, and active lifestyles, this is a photo from Bike the Block on Jennings Street. There's some free bike repair there. This is from our partner Street Lab, who had a pop-up with some drawing and writing tables. And last one here is from Manhattan for Make Music New York, demonstrating some of the audiovisual logistics that might be provided for other types of programming. All right, so we're going to move on to eligibility. Essentially, activities should be welcoming to all New Yorkers and should consider the diversity of the city. And we also highly encourage submissions from MWBEs. So we're asking anyone who is to please apply. And we're going to take a look at the timeline here. Applications are open now, so we're encouraging everyone to apply as soon as possible. And our team is going to be reviewing each application and scheduling times to meet with organizations to discuss potential partnerships in the spring. And you can contact us anytime if you have any questions.
I'm going to add both the open street application and the public space programming application are open. For open streets, any open street that plans on launching prior to June 30th should apply before July 31st. Anyone that's beyond that, or I believe it's April, should apply before June 31st. But anyone that's going to open past then, there's an extended deadline. But both applications are currently open.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, please.
Yeah, I love all this stuff, to be honest. I'm just wondering, has it ever been done for sports, like to set up a basketball game for an afternoon and then open up the street again, just short term, for an afternoon or that type of thing? Is that possible?
So it is possible. There is a requirement for the Open Streets program that there be at least 4 weeks of consecutive activations.
Oh,
So let's say you were to have a basketball game for 4 weeks straight, or have the open street that's closed. Either it's different activations on each week, but it does need to be at least a 4-week commitment.
so Burkina, this is like it's not like doing a block party or something like that. It's a different scale of event, basically.
Exactly. And I mean, some people compare it to maybe having a block party on a weekly basis. But it's if that's how you want to compare it, but it does need to be done. It's not a one-off event. It would be done at least 4 weeks. It could be extended beyond that for months. It
Yeah.
could be the whole year if you're interested, but at least 4 weeks.
The one thing that I loved the look of was one of those streets had become, it looked to me like a plaza, with painting on the floor. How did that evolve? That started as a 4-week project and then it evolved?
Well, they were actually one of our open streets that were a little bit more than 4 weeks. They were open majority of the year, multiple days a week. And as we go through the program, we identify certain sites and partners that are interested in managing a plaza, something that's more permanent.
Mhm.
And that's what happened at Beverly. They were the sites that evolved from an open street into a plaza.
So when you say manage, it means actively manage. I mean, that's a community group that's organized and that you trust them enough to maintain and clean and all that.
Exactly. And I mean, we have resources that we offer in terms of maintenance and operation if need be, especially for priority investment areas. And that's determined by some of our citywide goals and data-based, what's it called? Like our database standards for priority
Mhm.
investment areas.
Right.
But we do offer those resources. So when we talk about management, it's more about activations. If you're able and you have the capacity to do
Yeah.
maintenance, then absolutely.
Yeah.
But we do offer assistance if all
Oh,
of
I
that is
see.
needed.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you very much, DOT, for presenting. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Victoria.
Okay, so if we could just move right along to the official housekeeping of the board. We did not have any correspondence this month. Does anybody have any old business to bring up? Does anybody have any new business to bring up? Okay, can I entertain a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Jerry first. Can I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I just want to wish everybody a very joyous and happy and healthy and safe holiday season. And we will see you back in the new year.
Okay,
you
Happy
all
New
for coming.
Year.
Thanks,
Happy
everyone.
New Year.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays, guys.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays, everyone.